everybody. My name is Matthew Ashdown, Gene Keys Guide. Welcome to another exploration into the world of Gene Keys and beyond with Gene Keys guides and ambassadors from our community. And today I'm very excited to have with me a very special guest and friend from the pod, as we like to call ourselves, the Diya Welland. And Diya and myself and Jesse, who you met last week, or watched me interview last week. We three host every second Friday something called Gene Keys and Myth, and we go into a deep dive and exploration of Gene Keys, myth, and human design, which is a particular passion of Diya's, as you'll find out today. And so Diya has many talents, has a very wide and varied background in working with individuals in health and human potential. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing her shares and reflections today in this space. And welcome, Diya. Welcome to our space together today.
Thanks, Matthew. It's great to be here. I really appreciate this.
And you are in, I'm going to say this, Rarotonga, right?
Rarotonga, that's correct. Yes, in the Cook Islands.
And for somebody who doesn't know where the Cook Islands, like what are we? It's in the ocean somewhere. It's what's it near? For those who are,
it's kind of near Tahiti and Fiji, a little bit below Samoa. But the easiest way to find us is if you start in Hawaii and you do a direct line, 6,000 miles, so 3,000 to the equator, and then another 3,000 miles underneath that, and you'll hop to the
direct
right.
line.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Switch it across, and we're right there. So we're basically on the same longitude as Hawaii.
Ah. Oh, wow. Hawaii is that's one of my favorite places in the world to be, and that longitude connection must have some significance there between those two.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you know, some people say it's the southern tip of the continent of Lemuria.
Absolutely, which we did a call on recently, so you can go and listen to that on Clubhouse. So, maybe that'll come up in some of our conversations today. Then we'll have to see. What emerges. So, Diya, we're going to launch right into letting you speak for yourself on this. I know you offer human design sessions. You're also a Gene Keys guide, and there's many other things that you've offered throughout the years. And just you know, if you could, I'd love to hear what brought you to the world of, I'm going to ask what brought you to the world of human design, because you found that before you found the Gene Keys, if I'm not mistaken.
I did, yeah. It was actually one of those synchronistic events that I was in Ashland, Oregon. I was actually up in Gold Hill, Oregon, in 2004 or 5. I always get the year mixed up. And there was a fire in my cabin, and I was meant to be having a writing group show up. And anyway, the group showed up, and I was all, you know, higgledy-piggledy from the fire in the cabin. And they kind of looked at each other and went, you know what, there's not going to be any writing done today. And so one said to the other, shall we check out her design? And this guy looked at me and he says, would you like to know some things about yourself? And I went, sure, love to. He says, do you know your birth time? And I went, well, yeah, I was told it was, you know, such and such. And he goes, okay. So next thing I know, I'm looking at this body graph, and all I could see was, you know, patterns and geometric shapes and lines and numbers. And I was like, what the heck is this in my mind? But on another level, I recognized it as the circuitry of our aura and how we interact with the world and each other, and this representation of me. And I was like, wow, this is phenomenal. So it was that one experience that led me into this beginning exploration. And for the first few years of my experiment, I did everything I could do to find the loopholes. Where does this not work? Where is this? Because I've got this kind of like doubtful mind. And
yeah. Divine doubt. Yeah, I get
divine
it.
doubt, exactly. And I was also kind of this like, yes, this is updated. Yes, this is really amazing. And I've done so much in the work of human potential. I really don't need to add anything into my life. But I was curious. So the guy that introduced me to it, V, who has since passed, he was amazing. He was a self-projected projector, similar to you.
That's me. Yeah.
That's you, yeah. And he really helped me in a like he transmitted a lot of information. And later years, I began to understand how much I actually absorbed and how much I had taken in. But it wasn't until later on that I began to go into, diving into it deeper. And that was around 2009. I began to go deeper into it, and then 12, 13, another level, and then I began my analyst training in 2016.
Right.
So yeah, but
So
Gene Keys, I've been doing it for a long time. Yes.
And the Gene Keys crept into your life. How long ago was that?
I wouldn't actually say it crept in.
No, I was just going to say, I caught myself saying that. I was like, did I really mean crept in?
Gene Keys, I was actually going through a very deep soul sort of exploration in human design where things just weren't making sense to me, and I was losing faith, I was losing hope, I was losing connection, because it all just felt like it was so much not self. It's like, oh, you're not self. Oh, this is where you go wrong. Oh, this is, this is showing up how bad, horrible, and terrible I am. And I was tired of it, and I didn't relate to being a generator for other reasons. And there was just this, like, it wasn't making sense. But the other thing that was really missing for me was the spiritual component, this aspect of presence. I mean, I come from growing up in the Baha'i faith. I'd done huge amounts of body work and craniosacral therapy. I'd walked this real sort of, as some people like to call it, navel gazing life. And I was missing something. And I was at a workshop, and there was this deck of cards there, and I picked them up, and my hands got hot, and my whole body just had this wave of, I've come home. This is it. This is what I'm looking for. I just felt such contentment.
Chills.
Yeah,
you're telling the story.
It was really powerful. And the leader of the workshop looked over at me, and she said, "Oh, you don't want to deal with those. They're not pure human design." And I was just like, "Oh, well, I don't care what you say. I am into this because this is powerful." And that was around 2015.
Okay.
So that was Rosie Aronson's deck of cards, and
That's insane.
you know them well because every week you lead a workshop with them on Clubhouse.
I have a strong affinity to those cards, and I love being able to share with Rosie just how much of an impact she's had with those cards. And now I've got another story to share with her, or you'll share with her, just how much that because it was that brought you to this, when so often it's Richard's book and yet you felt this with these cards in this way. So yeah.
And so then I went home, and because of course, I take a photograph and I go home and I investigate and I dive into it, and I automatically ordered whatever book I could find on Book Depository, and went onto the website, and the genekeys.com website, and just began investigating, got my golden path. And I spent a solid year going through the golden path on my own. And really diving deep into it and exploring it. And then I bought a deck of the cards, and I got the books, and I had to go to the States, I think, to actually get the Gene Keys book. Because shipping to New Zealand at the time was pretty extraordinary. Been on Amazon. And yeah, it was what Richard brought forth for me was like this utter divinity of who we are when we face a shadow.
Mm-hmm.
In 2009, I'd come across the work of oh my goodness, her name's gone out of my Debbie Ford with The Shadow Effect.
Oh yeah.
Phenomenal movie. And I
Mm-hmm.
did an instant buy now on that, and it arrived, and I used to host movie nights for my friends to watch this movie because I felt it was so important that people, you know, face shadows. And because I've been doing it for years, and most people I know don't like to get into the shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And Richard does it in such an honoring way, because he's like, when you sit in that shadow, you find the gift. And it's that no mud, no lotus, you know, it's like I'm in the mud.
Yeah.
This beautiful lotus flower is here. It's there. And it's not scary. And there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah, there's utter presence and beauty.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was my
Yeah, the Shadow Effect. I remember when that movie came out. I think it was 2009 because we brought it to me and a buddy brought it to a screening here on Vancouver Island, and it was again that same kind of thing. And at that point, I came across Gene Keys about a year or two later, and at that time I was working with this mentor, and it was all shadow work. And it felt like in a similar way to what you were sharing, like it's the not self. It felt like this, I kept thinking I had this sense there's got to be a gift within here. I think that was probably the word I was using. It's like there must be a gift in here. And then to hear Richard say that, the gift within the shadow, it's like, this is a way through this second Gene Key life's work of mine appreciates this teaching here with the Gene Keys. So, yeah, absolutely. It wasn't just this, oh, you're just going to, I think you and I share this fourth Gene Key as well, which moves from the shadow of intolerance to the gift of understanding and the city of forgiveness. So when you were saying that about like, just all this not self stuff and not, it's like, don't give me more reasons to be intolerant of myself. There's got to be some beauty in this, in this that wants to express. And that's what it was for the Gene Keys for myself as well. So you started getting into that. It was 2015 that you stumbled upon that, and that kind of opened up that world of Gene Keys for you.
Yeah, it did. And what it did is it gave me an understanding of what it is that Ra had brought forth in human design. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, I entered fully into Richard's world, and then I was like, oh, okay, I can begin to see how he's taken this and come forth with that. Because, of course, the geeky person that I am, I had to sit down with the body graph, a printed body graph, and my hologenetic profile and write out everything where all of these things come from. Oh, the core wound is Mars. Cool, I got that. Oh, okay, Jupiter, who got the pearl. Oh, look, he's done the 2 Jupiters. He's done this. He's done this. Okay, so why hasn't he done the personality moon? Like this is the drive. This is
Yeah,
the soul, like the personality soul, right? Like, why is that not in there? Well, I know there's a reason, so it's going to come up in someday.
it
Um,
will.
it will, exactly. And so I really began to sit in presence with, that fourth, that forgiveness of myself and everybody else who had given me these keys. Because Ra wrote human design, like he wrote the I Ching, the Rave I Ching for the not self.
Mm.
Okay. That's what it's written for. It's written for the not self. And in Ra's world, I guess, is that, because I never actually spoke to him, but is that if he highlights the not self, the person's true self will come out of that.
Mm.
So if we name all of this stuff, then this will come better. But it was very much like a whole lot of sticks and no carrots. And I like the carrots. You know, I like carrot cake with icing and everything else that's there. So I wanted something that helped me to be present. And so what I began doing was working with both. For myself, I hadn't even entered into analyst training. And I wanted to. I wanted to actually be an ambassador for the Gene Keys, but I came across too late. You know, I had 6 months too late, or maybe it was 3 months. I'm not too sure. But anyway, so I went into the dance of both. But because I couldn't be an ambassador in the Gene Keys, that gave me the impetus. And also I got asked by a couple of different people, you know, Diya, you know so much. Have you ever thought about being an analyst in human design? And I was like, I have. And I was like, oh, shit, I've gotten a yes. I'm going to go through with this now. And so I did.
And you did.
Yeah.
And you committed fully to it, and you've been working with it all these years. And I think you're speaking to the majority of people that I meet along the way in this work in the Gene Keys community are people who are very much working with the body of the Gene Keys, and then they come to human design, and it's like it's another big system, right? Gene Keys by itself, you've seen the book, right? It's a big book, and that's just part of it. You got all these courses and everything, and so people can come to that, and they get overwhelmed, and then suddenly they hear, oh yeah, there's also really. And I'm totally of this. It's like there's so many beneficial aspects of the human design that have given me something that I didn't necessarily pick up in the Gene Keys. And so somebody who is brand new to this, you know, it can look overwhelming, but I think coming to meet with you, I think you've helped me simplify it in a lot of ways, or simplify it for me and others along the way. And I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask too is that if somebody is, you mentioned the conscious moon, for instance, that it's something that's pretty big in consideration in the human design world, and yet it's not something that's. And I've worked with my conscious moon. And it's like, oh my gosh, that really does. I see the impact that one has in the day-to-day patterns of the moon orbiting the Earth, and and it's not in the Gene Keys chart. So what I would love to ask is, like, for somebody who has never worked with Gene Keys, but human design before, they're maybe working with Gene Keys, probably working with Gene Keys if they're watching this, that they've never worked with human design before. Is there aspects of it that you feel, yeah, it'd be really important if you knew? I mean, obviously, if you knew all of it, it would be really helpful. But if there's some of the things that you work with as fundamentals with people that can really, like, you've spoken to this piece about the not self and getting clear on, you know, the conditioning field and the projection field, that kind of thing. But are there aspects of it that you feel like, oh, if people knew these simple things, it could make a world of difference to their life? And human design has that in it, but maybe Gene Keys doesn't. That was a big question, I think.
It's a huge question, Matthew, and I love it.
Okay.
I'm mentally kind of unpacking, but I'm also just seeing what flows through me. And I guess that from a personal level, understanding the arenas of the undefined versus the defined. And that's in terms of the centers, not the gates, but the centers. The gates is a whole other ball game. But looking at the undefined centers and how it's so easy to get swept up in believing that we need to be like that person. So say somebody's got a undefined G center, you know, like a gateless G center, and they've got no gates in that G center, and they're being told by some authority figure that they need to get a handle on their identity. You know, it's like You know, you want love, you go out and find love. You've got to find your own direction. You need to find your direction, right? I mean, coaches are wonderful. I did
Mhm.
coach for a long time before I got into human design. I was like, woo, changing the coaching world for me. And this person who doesn't have any definition in their G center is going to think there's something fundamentally wrong with them because they feel like a chameleon. So they've been
Mhm.
living their life as a chameleon, and they're able to just love, love. Like their love is has got no boundaries. And they're able to understand all these different types of identities. And they're able to love all these different types of people. It's like this boundless love that's there.
Mhm.
And somebody's like, well, you know, you really need to like get a handle on your relationships. And you know, I don't understand you. You're able to love all these different types of people. You've gone from this to that. You know, like, who are you really? And so the person goes, oh my God, I don't know who I am. And so when we come across the gene keys, um, and we look at programming partners, or we look at a single gate in that, then the person might go, oh, this is my everything in this particular arena of love and direction. But it's not. There's all this other aspect which is undefined.
Mhm.
And that particular key will show up differently depending on who is in their life that has something that's defined. So this dance of definition and openness, or definition and undefined, to me is actually something that's really important.
Mhm.
And that helps to land us in our authority, in our personal authority, so that we can be authentic, as a recognized or authentic, external authority, outer authority for others. So I don't know if that kind of made
Yeah.
sense, but it's where the body graph to me is such a gift.
Mhm.
It
I've
really
heard,
is.
and I've heard Richard speak very highly of the body graph as well. And the body graph, and so for somebody who's brand new to it, when they're looking at this body graph and these images, the undefined centers are the ones that are white, and the defined centers are the ones that are colored in some color. I'm colorblind, so I say some color.
Yeah, some color. Yeah, yeah.
Just say some color. It's a color. I know what white is. I can see white. And so you're speaking this definition, defined and undefined. And actually, if so, what I'm hearing then, I can see in a way maybe why the two books Richard has released. One is about circuitry, which is all the channels that you're talking about, which are defined and undefined. And then his other book, Revelation, which is, it goes a lot into talking about these defined and undefined centers. So you know, that those might be possible resources for folks, but also this is what you work with people. You're exploring this very thing. Like, I love how you share that. I happen to be somebody who's got a defined G center, and so I can recognize that dynamic that you're talking about. And I know people who have undefined centers, and they can reflect on exactly, or undefined G centers specifically. And what you shared there was definitely the experiences that they share with me, of working with that and having that in their life. So I completely agree for myself. That has been a game changer in working with those and learning about those. And then the other aspect is these channels that you're speaking of, and they can be defined and undefined as well. So could you add a little more in relation to that? Because I love this idea of what we call electromagnetic channels, and how that plays out in our relationships too.
Yeah, yeah. So you know enough about the gene keys that when we've got a programming partner, but we also have, in human design world, we have the electromagnetic. And so the electromagnetic is basically where you've got a gate on one um one center and then another gate on another center, and they come together and they form a channel. And I'm smiling because it's like this sort of, warped sense of humor of mine where, and I'm sure Ra went through this and many other analysts go through this as well. It's like, oh my God, wow, we connect on this. This is amazing. And then that's also where the relationship will actually come apart.
Right.
Or can come apart. And it's like you get two magnetics, and sometimes they're working together and they fit nicely together. And then other times they just kind of like can't connect at all. And what I love about the electromagnetics when I'm working with a friendship or challenges in relationships or working with clients is seeing the magic that comes out of what happens when this energy of these two very different beings comes together.
Mm-hmm.
What is the mutative potential that is there? What is the alchemical soup that comes about when these two people come together? Because it's not going to be like anybody else. A lot of people go, oh, you've got like gate 4, right? We've both got the gene key 4, but it plays out very differently in our lives.
Yeah.
The placement because of the center being defined or undefined. Mine's connected to the 63, so I've got this like consistent logical way of being that can sometimes be a bit of a detriment for me because I'm here to be a complete individual. Like I'm very individual. So, my logical way of being can sometimes take me out of the abstract world. And my abstract availability can take me out of being logical. But the electromagnetic is, there's a lot to be said for the honoring of uniqueness. And so when I'm working with a client and I'm doing a foundation reading, I really want them to understand that they might have the 47, right? And someone else has got the 47. But how that process of transfiguration and transmutation comes about, or how they experience oppression, is unique for them. And if they have 64, or somebody in their life has got the 64, which creates the electromagnetic, what confusions has that person brought to their life that are going to be different from the confusions that they experience when they enter out into another relationship? But they transfer those past confusions onto this confusion and then feel oppressed.
Right. Yeah.
So
this is one of the things we were going to talk about too, is that one of Diya's nicknames from the past is Sherlock, and I can just see it. It's just like there's this thing going off inside of you where you're just piecing together these patterns, aren't you? You just love these patterns, and I love them to a large extent as well, and just seeing them popping off. But I can really, it's your whole face lights up when you're even just, I was going there with you. Oh, the 64, right, and then the 47 over here, and actually I was just funny because you mentioned the 47, which I think we're going to come to in a moment because it happens to be your core. And it happens to be somebody I was speaking with the other day. It was her core, and her son has the 47 as their culture sphere, or it's their unconscious, or design Jupiter in human design language. And so she was kind of getting protective of like, oh, I've got to deal with this so that he doesn't. And it's like, oh no, it's going to be who's to say what this experience of oppression will be? And it's like it could be a very different thing. So So for you to pluck that out as an example, I think is great because I literally was just in that, exploring that with somebody the other day. And so 47, if we can lead into it, 47 is your core. And for those who are working through the Venus deep dive, we've got a few more weeks left together as a group of people, but as they say, the Venus is never done. And so this 47, though, I feel is something that's really supportive for so many of us in our contemplations with the gene keys. It moves from the shadow of oppression to the gift of transmutation. We talk a lot about transmutation and alchemy when it comes to the gene keys, and the city of transfiguration, which Diya was mentioning there. So in this exploration of the 47, I'd love to hear both from a human design or gene keys perspective, what's alive for you around that right now? What kind of gifts has that gene key been or gate been bringing your way of recent?
Yeah, it's a biggie. So I've got 47 line 4 3 times.
Oh, it's extra biggie.
It's extra.
Where else do you have it in your?
Pluto.
Oh,
Both
it's
Pluto.
Pluto, right?
So I'm part of the Pluto generation.
Yeah.
So those people figure out how old I am.
Richard
And
Red is as well.
he
He's
is.
a 47 in Pluto, I think, as well.
Yes,
So,
he is.
right.
I'm the same age as Richard.
Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah. And Claudia. Yeah.
Right. Yes. And you and Claudia do another clubhouse room together. That's the solar plexus.
Solar plexus.
Yeah. We'll put a link
And
in for that as well so people can explore that one.
so this key, it's been huge for me. And I mean, I could talk about or share my experiences and all the different things that I have come to believe through my experiences with this key for hours because it's so big in my world and my life. In human design, Ra says in the Ray Ching, this is the gate of repression, the constraints of external oppression, and a sense of identity that can be maintained despite external conditioning. So that's the keynotes in the Ray Ching of the 47 line 4. And the exploration that I entered into through human design was going deep into this and see how my personality sun, the 49 line 4, the gate of revolution, which is here to bring about rebirth, is literally formed because of this abstract way of seeing emotionality or making sense of emotionality. And so but in my human design days, I couldn't touch it. I couldn't get into it. You know, all I heard was oppression. And it didn't have the aspect of realizing that it's also the gate of realizing is what Ra says, but there was so much emphasis on oppression. And so it took going into understanding how I had actually been in my meditation process throughout most of my adult life. I mean, there's this way of my meditation came about in the early 90s, and where I would literally lay down and begin to boil. So I would go into this breathing technique and I would just open myself up to feeling everything. And then I could feel myself get into the state of tension perturbation and, like this sort of the pot beginning to boil, and then the lid comes off and the steam has escaped. Like it's on, right? Well, that's what my body would do. And I called it my years of shake, rattle, and roll. And it wasn't until many years later when I read Transfiguration and what Richard has written about the 47th gene key, that it was like, oh my God, I wasn't crazy. It was like what I was doing as in my early 20s was actually transfiguring. Got it. Like I really got it. But then I began to go through, well, what is this aspect of oppression? And when I entered into the Venus sequence for the first time in 2015, I was reading it. I could see that it's like, oppression is something that we actually need. This is where we have the gift that comes out of this oppression. There's nothing wrong with oppression. But if somebody is allowing themselves to be oppressed, or even worse, oppressing themselves, it's horrible. And I did it myself for years. I didn't talk
and
about
understandably, it's your core wound. Like
it's my core wound, exactly.
And Pluto's there too.
I had to get old enough and wise enough to be able to go, oh yeah, now I get it. I'm okay with it now.
Yeah.
But it was, there was a lot of difficulty in what is it that I'm meant to be transmuting? What's mine to do the work for? Like you mentioned earlier, this woman who's got a son who's got the same key, but in a different arena, in a different sphere. And she's like, well, if I do all of this work, then my son's not going to deal with oppression. So it doesn't work that way. But what does work for me, according to my design, is what works for me according to my design. And this is the beauty of uniqueness. It's like that incredible availability to come deeply into presence with, this is me and that's you, and this is the we that happens when you and I create this aura together. And then when we expand into others, this is the larger we. And that, takes me into family dynamics and family systems and race sociology and child development, which is all other things that I did. But
yeah, I think we'll have to do another interview on just that, because I find that you and I have had conversations about that, but it's like I find that stuff fascinating too. And what I'm hearing as well is I also know that you have a 49th gene key as your life's work, and this is the gift of revolution. Reaction to revolution is the city of rebirth, and it's one that is it tends to be very aware of the world at large. And so when I heard you asking that, it's like, okay, I'm aware of this piece of the world and this times that we're in. And it's like this question of what's my piece to work with? And I thought, oh, I can feel that, like that dynamic there. And I think a lot of people who are activists and a lot of people who are involved in different movements around the world, it's like there can be that, yeah, we can go out of that based on our conditioning, as it were. But this simple question of like, what's my responsibility within this, I think is such a
huge. It's huge. And if it's like well, I'm recalling it, so I'll speak about it. But I remember I met up with a woman in the States, and I met her online before I got to meet her in person, and I kept having this feeling like every single day, I want to learn how to play the cello. I want to learn how to play the cello. Like there was this deep yearning inside of me to learn how to play the cello. And I couldn't figure it out because I'm not musically inclined in that particular way. Anyway, I met her and I found out she plays the cello and she's really bloody good. And she's a manifester and she's an emotional manifester. And she has a channel between the solar plexus and the throat. Manifestors are here to bring something beautiful and unique of themselves forth. You know, it's like it comes from within. And I remember sitting there with her going, oh my God, you know, there is this music that desires to come forth through you. And for you to be playing the cello and bringing that forth into the world with it's going to help people shift things. And I don't remember all the different aspects of her design. I mean, it was several years ago, but it was this huge insight. And because I'm quad right, I'm very receptive to people, and I just received all this information. And she ended up playing the cello one night for me, and it was divine. Like, it was utterly, unbelievably divine, and it was so strong in me. But she didn't want to do it. She wouldn't do it. And I thought, you know, like years later, I've contemplated, I wonder who has stepped into that piece, that role, that is going to bring forth the music to transmute the frequencies that she could transmute with her gift. And I hope that somebody has.
I just got chills when you said that. I love that. I love that. Yeah, the universe has that depth of intelligence to it where it's like somebody somewhere will play this role.
I hope so. But
Yeah.
it does show, and to me it does highlight that, you know, we all have our unique path. And I've written quite a bit, and not completely. I keep putting it up on Facebook instead of a blog. I know I got to do a blog, but on the 25 line 3, which is one of the suicide gates.
Yes.
You know, and every time we get a transit through the 25 line 3, I just wait. I just wait for, like, who am I going to hear about now that's decided to end their life because of the loss of innocence? And it can be deeply distressing for me to feel that there are these incredibly creative souls out there who are choosing to end their life because of a particular transit that highlights something and they believe it's true for them. And it's like, it's the same thing when we have a particular gift or a talent to bring forth and we choose not to. It's
Absolutely.
really sad. So
yeah. Isn't that why we do the work we do?
Exactly. That's what I was just going to say. This is why the Venus sequence is so incredible, because we are taken deep into the womb. You know, this is what the core wound, you can see, this is what the core wound has brought up with me.
Yeah.
Is the realizations that it's my self-oppression that have been detrimental to my life. When I have allowed the oppression of others to misinform myself. I've believed their misinformation. I've got my own personal authority. I've got to live by my authority, not theirs.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Thank you. And thank you for sharing the story of the cellist. And, you know, I feel like when we can trust that yearning, to me, it's like that trust in the deep intelligence of the universe that says, if this person is going to be a cellist, it means that it's going to bring, it's literally, I mean, Richard often uses that notion of we each have a note to play within the orchestra, right? And so, you know, and I think of because this is a common conversation with people in the Gene Keys community. In fact, it showed up on a call we were exploring last night with this sense of purpose, and I'm always reminded of the story of Martin Luther King's mother, who loved being a mother and was committed to her three children more than anything else. She didn't know who her son was going to grow up to become when she's nurturing and just blessing these children and living that aspect of her, to tell her that she needs to go out and do more and be more of an activist. Who knows what if she was obviously playing her role very well, right? And I just think of that with when we're listening to our own, that the beat of our own uniqueness, where we can say, I don't know what everybody else's part in this orchestra is, but I love seeing it when it comes together, where it's like, oh, I'm just playing my part, and look, I'm meeting this person who compliments me. Here's the bassist to my to my lead guitarist or whatever it is. And I feel like maybe this is this 49th Gene Key speaking as well too, but just to be able to witness this this movement in the collective that way, and just this social change. So I love the story of the cellist. Thank you for bringing that in. And I think and I love how you reflected on that, the oppression of self, because whether we have this gene key or not in our chart, I'm sure that we're listening to this and we're recognizing how we've oppressed ourselves through our own core wounds, and so I think that's really insightful. And we've got a few minutes left here, and I would love to know, this one I'm kind of throwing at you, maybe I don't want to say out of left field, but I would love to know if there's anything that you would. Actually, I almost feel like, not that I know the answer to this, but I've heard you speak it today and so often, which is this embracing our uniqueness. And so I feel that you have something that you could share with those that are concerned that they might actually lose themselves within, when they step into their purpose and into groups and things like that, but that there's actually this strengthening of our uniqueness through this work, this experience of stepping into this.
You gonna finish the sentence?
No. I saw the light bulb go off for you, so I was like, I'm gonna let her work with that.
A few years ago, I had this big thing come up with me of going, okay, so I noticed a pattern again. I'm losing myself in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I lose myself when I go into a group. Like I like, what's going on here? I'm tired of losing myself. Okay. And I hear it from a lot of women, and I hear it from men too, not just a woman. Like it's a universalization.
Universal. Yeah.
Yeah, we lose ourselves. And so with the body graph, we can go, oh, that's me, that's them. Right. But what often happens when people sleep in the same aura is that we become homogenized. And when we're in families growing up, there's a lot of homogenization that goes on. And so we get these tendencies that get like hijacked by the group aura, the family dynamic. And then we go out to the world and we reenact these stories. And so, of course, we lose ourselves in relationship, because there's this other aspect which has been so good and so well conditioned away from living our uniqueness as a child. Okay. So it's like, this is that unpacking that we get to do. Well, that I like to do, because I love seeing patterns.
Patterns.
And really being present to that stripping away to be ourselves. That the 4323 is literally here to bring about a new order.
And that's your purpose and your radiance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and it's unconscious, in human design language, it's unconscious. It's my design, and it's aligned 6, and I've got 43 3 times as well. Twice is align 6 and once is align 4, I believe. And so people would say to me, "Oh my God, you're like this professor," and I'd be like, "I am." That was one of my other nicknames, was the professor, when I was in my early 20s. Someone would, ask me a question.
You were Sherlock and Moriarty.
But it was a running joke with these 2 friends of mine in San Diego. They'd ask me a question and they'd like just sit back and just wait, because hours later I'd stop talking, and I'd be like, I don't understand. How do I do that? I don't know that I know this information. But what happens is, these are the aspects that get sort of washed away when we're in a group, because the group aura needs aspects of us to be able to evolve and move forward. And so the honoring of uniqueness, for me, really comes about when we become very conscious of the uniqueness of others that we're in relationship with. And so then we can enter into the dance of honoring each other's uniqueness and differences, instead of dishonoring a person because they're not the same. I often laugh, because it's like, when we enter into a new relationship, we fall in love with sameness. Oh my God, you're just like me. Oh,
yeah.
I found my soulmate. And then it all falls apart 3 months later, when we're through the honeymoon phase and the oxytocin has begun to kind of like balance itself out. So when 2 people enter into a relationship correctly, whether they've been recognized and invited, or they've been, all the different things, responded correctly, informed, etc., there is a recognition that can take place of what those differences are. And when we maintain our own aura when we go to sleep, instead of sleeping in the aura of another person, we're able to wake up as ourself. And so therefore, we're less likely to get swept up into something that's our not self, because we're aware of ourself.
Yes, I love that. My wife didn't like it when I first started saying I gotta sleep on the sofa. I'm putting myself on the sofa. I'm a self-projected projector. She's a manifesting generator, and she likes the hug. And so I'm like, okay, and I can just feel that difference when I sleep on the sofa by myself, and just the difference that makes. And to know that in my heart, I'm there because I chose to be there on the sofa. Yeah.
It's hard. When I first came across the aura-free sleep thing, I was like, you gotta be kidding. Oh no, I'm a touch person.
Yeah.
I like nookie early in the morning. I'm not going to go sleep alone. No. And then it was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This is absolutely
you can
amazing.
Feel the difference. Yeah, absolutely.
And then I was a string of relationships that the guys were solar plexus defined. And I found that I could spend 2 nights with them. And then on the 3rd night, if we weren't able to have full conversations about emotionality, and I had time to digest all that emotionality, my body literally just ballooned up.
Oh, wow.
My pH, gate 6, gene key 6, my pH went all completely out of balance.
Right.
And my whole body was just like a mess. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. So, I had a string of relationships ending because I wanted to sleep alone.
Like, yeah, they took it personally.
You don't love me.
No, I just love my aura.
Exactly. I love myself. I'm sorry. I love myself.
Yes, self-love. Yeah.
That's self-love.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard yakka. It's a hard path
Mm-hmm.
to walk when we are saying, I am no longer going to abandon myself for this relationship. I am no longer going to dishonor myself for this relationship or job or whatever. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard path.
Yeah. Yeah.
I start off most of my readings with the this image, which is says, "Are you ready to work?" So the voice said to Ra when he stepped across the threshold, "Are you ready to work?" And he broke out in this full-on sweat, and all, everything happened from there. And that, to me, says it all, because
Mm-hmm.
4% of the population that enter into human design will actually go forth with it.
Mm. That
Like,
total deconditioning.
yeah,
Mm.
to get through the conditioning, 4% of 4% will actually work with their design, truly live their design. And I read that and I'm like, oh no, people are going to fall in love with this. This is amazing. All you have to do, and then I read later on, Ra said exactly that. It's like, oh, generators are going to love this. This is going to be easy for them. They just get asked yes, no questions. They sleep in their own aura. They wake up in the morning. They're full of life. They can do all these different things. I mean, it was going to be really easy, but no, most people, they don't want to do the work.
That's
There's
work. Mm-hmm.
resistance in the world.
It's what, sorry?
So much resistance in the
Right.
world
Mm-hmm.
and giving in to distractions. I mean, we could go through all the shadows and have a ball game with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And to go deep, like we're talking the core here, and to have that in the gene keys, even to really truly surrender into the depth of that. Richard talks about the moving through that pathway, the codon ring of trials, where we meet our forgetting, our distractions, our vanity, and just to truly go into the depth of that. So yeah, yeah, and to everybody who has made it to this point of the Venus sequence and you're still doing the work, it's like, yay for you, because it really does, it impacts life in so many ways. And it's that constant, like they said, we finished this Venus, but we're not finished. And I think everything you spoke to there, Dia, was just brilliant too, in terms of just this, for each of us. Are we ready to do that work? So we're going to bring it to a close here now. I want to say thank you, big thank you to Diya for everything you shared here today. And if you are somebody who is intrigued by this human design and you're determined to be one of that 4% of 4%, no, I'm joking. But if you feel like, oh yeah, there's something here about human design that you might feel it in the way Diya did, I can highly recommend her for sessions through one-on-one. She has group sessions, I think you do as well. But I think definitely the one-on-one sessions, to have a consult with you to see, how you can work together. And then from there, diving deep into your human design, it can be incredibly enlightening. And so, and also we'll have links for other links in I don't want to say show notes. That's the wrong word. I'll have links in the YouTube channel there for not only Diya's website, but also other sort resources for human design. But we'll have Diya can be found at diyawelland.com. I've also got her social media links there for you. So you can click on those. You can find there's many ways to reach out to her and make some time for this and explore this work of human design and Gene Keys together. And I wish you all well in that. And Diya, thank you so much. Thank you for joining me today. Next week we have Laurie Andrews, who is also another Gene Keys guide. Surprise, surprise. And she's somebody who comes from a multidimensional perspective on life too, and we'll be journeying together next week. And we'll continue to bring. I've got a lineup of people now, Woof, and it's really exciting. I love bringing all these different flavors of the Gene Keys. I said it last week when I was talking to Jesse. I think it was like Baskins and Robbins, 64 flavors of Gene Keys, and and more here. So thank you, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed our time here together. I know I have. I hope Dia has as well. And we will see you anon. Thank you very much.